All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Brittany Cheatham. I am the communications manager with Forward Justice, and we are excited to have our team here today to talk with you all about this historic victory and what it means for voting rights in our state. Today, we expanded the we in We the People, and we will hear this afternoon from Daryl Atkinson, co-director of Forward Justice, and one of our lead attorneys on the case. We will hear from Dennis Gaddy, Executive Director of Community Success Initiative and organizational plaintiff in the case. We will hear from Stanton Jones of Arnold and Porter, another one of our amazing attorneys on this case. We'll hear from Diana Powell, Executive Director of Justice Served and organizational plaintiff in the case. We'll hear from Corey Purdy, Executive Director of Wash Away Unemployment, an organizational plaintiff in this case. And we will hear from Reverend Dr. T. Anthony Spearman, President of the North Carolina NAACP. We will take questions afterwards, and we ask everyone, if you're not speaking, to please remain on mute. And with no further ado, we will get started. First up will be Daryl Atkinson, co-director Forward Justice and lead attorney on the case.
Thank you, Brittany. The North Carolina Constitution begins with "We the people" of the state of North Carolina. Our biggest quarrels and fights in this state have been and continue to be who gets to have a civic voice to be included in that "We the people." For centuries, women and Black folks were not included in that "We the people." This lawsuit was about us making sure that we include the 56,000 North Carolinians who are living in our communities, paying taxes every day, dropping kids off at school, but are serving community supervision for felony convictions. This case was about making sure those folks are included in that "We the people." We know who they are. They're disproportionately African American. And what the court did today was the largest expansion of voting rights in this state since the 1965 Voting Rights Act. They expanded the "we" in "We the people" to include people who are serving community supervision sentences for felony convictions. They expanded the "we" to include those people. And this case has always been about those people. Brittany, I don't know if I'm supposed to pass it to Dennis or go back to you. I'm going to kick it back to you to continue to run the show.
That sounds good. I was going to give you as much time as you needed, because we always love hearing your thoughts on this. So we will kick it now to Dennis Gaddy, Executive Director of Community Success Initiative. Thank you again, Daryl. Dennis, you're up.
Thank you, Brittany, and hello to everyone. My name is Dennis Gaddy, as stated, and I'm excited about today's ruling. Prior to today, we would often hear that a person who came home from prison or jail would be classified as a returning citizen. And I would always take issue with that, because to me, if you couldn't vote, you're not a citizen in North Carolina. All that changed today. 56,000 people now are re-enfranchised, where they'll be able to vote and have a voice, and to be able to have a say in their communities and in their families and in their own lives. I'm speaking as one of those people myself, formerly incarcerated, spent 5.5 years in the North Carolina Department of Corrections because of some poor choices I made. And for 7 years after 2005, my year of release, I was unable to vote because I was on probation. Missed many elections. One of those elections was a main one, if you ask me. It was the election in 2008 of our first African-American president, and I, after having been totally steeped in civic-minded work with my mom and my dad, I could not vote in that election, and I was devastated. I also run an organization where we work with people who find themselves entangled in the criminal justice system. And day in and day out, I spend face time, and my staff spends face time with people who also are entangled. This law today allows me on tomorrow, Tuesday, when is the day that we start our workshops and classes at our office, I get to walk into a room of 10, 15, 20 people and let them know if they're in this room today, they're able to vote. They don't have to be confused about it. They don't have to ask if they are eligible to vote. They don't have to go through any of those things that would have to go through that causes fear and doubt in a lot of cases. They don't have to worry about any of that. Starting today and starting tomorrow, when I enter that classroom, I get to say, the wait is over. And I'm excited to be a part of this transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Very powerful words. We will next hear from Stanton Jones of Arnold and Porter, another one of the attorneys on our case.
Thank you. Today's historic ruling delivers promise of justice. You hear me? My video cut out and somebody's so there's a lot of background noise.
We'll ask again that you please remain on mute unless you're speaking, and please keep your video off if possible, so that it does not disturb the live stream. There will be time at the end for questions, and we'll ask you to unmute yourselves then, but for now, everyone please remain on mute and video off unless you're speaking. Thank you. Back over to you, Stanton.
Thank you. Today's historic ruling delivers on a promise of justice by the North Carolina NAACP half a century ago. A promise that all people living in communities across the state, including people on supervision from a felony conviction, deserve to have their voices heard in elections. Today, 50 years after a small group of Black legislators in the General Assembly began trying to deliver on that promise, trying to dismantle this racist disenfranchisement law, justice is finally served. Starting today, if a person can just say, I am not in jail or prison for a felony conviction, then that person can register and they can vote freely. That simple change to say that if you live in the community, you get a vote, you get a voice. It will add the voices of 56,000 people to North Carolina's democratic process starting today. Those 56,000 voices matter. They are the voices of neighbors, coworkers, family members. They are the voices of parents, taxpayers, community leaders. They are the voices of the people like plaintiffs Shakita Norman and Timmy Locklear. And finally, those 56,000 voices will be heard, empowering themselves and their communities through the democratic process. And on behalf of our entire team, I'm honored to join the plaintiffs in celebrating this step forward.
Thank you, Stanton. An amazing day, an exciting day. We will now hear from Diana Powell, Executive Director of Justice Served and organizational plaintiff in the lawsuit. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Brittany. What a very exciting day. When I heard the ruling, I wanted to run in the street and tell everybody that now you have a voice. I am so excited for this historic day. It is a day that I feel history has been made. I feel a part of those that have been the forerunners of the past, that have paved the way for us to be on the front line, to be those boots on the ground. And I'm just so excited. Can't wait to continue to spread the good news that history has been made in North Carolina. I feel like the John Lewis, the Stacey Adams, and all the other ones that are out there, because of so much that's going on around the world today to suppress the vote. But this day in North Carolina, history has been made and a change has come. As John Lewis said, your vote is precious, almost sacred, one of the most powerful nonviolent tools that we have to make a more perfect union. John Lewis, 2012. Today, 2021, history has been made in North Carolina. I am so proud of the team, the work that have been put in. I know that it has been tireless, but we celebrate today, this day in North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you. We will next hear from Corey Purdy, Executive Director of Wash Away Unemployment, another of our organizational plaintiffs in the lawsuit. Corey, take it away.
Well, you got an opportunity to speak. No longer muted. You know, just speaking of, you know, just going behind Diana, just the energy, and just shout out to all those that have spoke before me, and all those that's been working with the Second Chance Alliance, Dennis, Daryl, Waitley, and so many others. They gave us the opportunity to speak, and I just give a shout out to everybody that, throughout the years that haven't even encouraged myself to use my voice, because really, after so many years of being told I couldn't speak, I didn't think my vote mattered. And then a lot of people, I'm speaking for not only myself, but also a lot of folks that was incarcerated with myself, and also those that have been incarcerated across the state that have been out for years, but have still not initiated their opportunities. And some now have been allowed the opportunities, but because of the fear of being able to speak, you know, being in prison from a teenager all the way up, and then being told that if you say anything, you'll be, you'd be locked up in a hole, or if you say anything, you'll be, threatened to be maced, and all this stuff. It has allowed us to be so muted. And a lot of people I know that deal with a population of former incarcerated people that come out, you'll notice that we are very quiet. Most of us are very quiet. And we're not quiet for no reason. I wasn't always quiet all my life, but after being told for years that you couldn't say anything, and now to be released from prison, and then to know that we still were not considered residents or considered citizens, that we still couldn't use our voices. And myself, after being released in 2003, the first time I exercised my right to vote was in 2008. But that's because of through an encouragement of, like I said, those that are part of Second Chance Alliance, those have walked with us throughout the years. But I didn't think it mattered. But just knowing that using our voice have, over the last few years, with the lobby days and visiting the legislative with the Second Chance Alliance, and understanding that, if we don't say anything, no one, there's no reason complaining for one. And then on the other side is that no one can hear. But now just to know that after the judge ruling this morning, and the work of all the attorneys on this case and all the advocates, that we no longer are muted. And that as a culture of people formerly incarcerated, over 56,000, they mentioned, they can now use their voice. And not only 56,000 that's been released today, but all those that have been out for years, that have been muted and been afraid to speak because of the trauma and the stigma that's been put on their lives. But I just appreciate and shout out to everybody that worked on this, and those that encourage those to use their voices. Today is a new day.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for sharing. What we've heard consistently throughout the day is the importance of people being able to use their vote to make their voices heard. And starting today, that's a reality for 56,000 more North Carolinians, and we couldn't be more excited about that. To close us out, we're going to turn it over now to Reverend Dr. T. Anthony Spearman, President of the North Carolina NAACP. After Reverend Spearman speaks, we will take questions. Reverend Spearman, over to you.
Thank you, Brittany. I am so pleased to be a part of this press conference this afternoon and want to remind us all that when we work together, we win. When we fight together, we win. And when we vote together, we win. Back in August of last year, during a press conference where we informed the public about the Unlock Our Vote campaign, among other things, I was led to remind those listening how refreshing it would be if we could live out the length of our days as a constitutionally centered and morally minded people. The kind of people spoken of in the preamble of this nation's Constitution, those swept up in that utopian frame of mind that begins with the most important word in a democratic society, we. We, the people of the United States, who suffer to form a more perfect union where justice is established, where domestic tranquility is ensured, where the general welfare is promoted, and where we fully expect to seize opportunities to shape a new world out of the mess of a world that has been made. A more humane world, a more perfect union. We, the people, have the power to ordain, and we, the people, have the power to repeal. Yet that power only comes when we learn to operate from the better part of ourselves in order to reconfigure this new world. Earlier this morning, I listened with rapt attention to the ruling of the three-panel court in the case brought by the Community Success Initiative, Justice Served North Carolina Incorporated, Wash Away Unemployment, the North Carolina NAACP, Timothy Locklear, DeCaris Jones, Susan Marion, Henry Harrison, Ashley Cahoon, and Shakita Norman on behalf of those individuals who are prohibited from voting until they are unconditionally discharged from probation, parole, or post-release supervision, or a suspended sentence, often years after their release from incarceration and re-entry into society. There's a whole lot packed in there. All I feel compelled to do right now is to salute the 50-year-old vision of the late Reverend Joy Johnson, North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice retired Henry Fry, and Senator Mickey Mishaw, who back in 1971 and 1973 set the high bar that made today's ruling possible, and the power-packed presentations of a dream team of attorneys from Forward Justice and Arnold and Porter. Today, thousands of votes have been unlocked. Today, a burden has been lifted. Today, a more perfect union is being realized. On that day, back in August 2020, I said that what has happened in our holding institutions is utterly sinful, and it is time for them to be transformed. I believe it is immoral to disenfranchise any individual who is a citizen the right to vote. The states of Maine and Vermont got it right. There, everyone of voting age has the right to vote. Morally speaking, this form of disenfranchisement is the product of an explicitly racist effort after the Civil War to suppress the political power of African Americans. Although African Americans constitute 21.51% of North Carolina's voting age population, they represent 42.32% of the people disenfranchised while on probation, parole, and post-release supervision. It is time to unlock the vote. And today, the vote has been unlocked. It's a day that will go down in history in the state of North Carolina. Freedom is to relieve from restriction. Freedom is to remove some hindrance from. Freedom is to let something or someone off the hook. Thousands of persons who have been muted, Corey Purdy, are muted no mo. When our nation's returning citizens have an opportunity for redemption and employment and re-enfranchisement, we all win. Returning citizens will work to make our communities safer, our economy stronger, our democracy surer, and we will all live better. Today, more than 56,000 people have been relieved from restriction and will now be able to exercise their right to vote. The most powerful change agent you have in a democratic society. Bravo, Arlen Porter. Bravo, Forward Justice. Bravo, Dennis Gaddy, Diana Powell, and Corey Purdy. Bravo to the thousands of individuals who will now be re-enfranchised the moment, no, the second they walk out of those facilities. And I want you all to understand, and I strongly recommend to each of you that you make sure that you take time to use your power to vote, because it is not guaranteed. God bless our union. Thank you.
Hey, Brittany, this is Dennis Getty. Just a quick note on the 56,000. That's just for starters, right? The 56,000 is just for starters. That's not counting the 20 to 25,000 people per year that's being released on top of that 56,000. So this is gonna ultimately impact lots of people.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Spearman, for that powerful word as always. Thank you, Dennis, for reminding us of how much larger this victory is going to be. At this time, we will take questions from the media. If you could please announce your name and your outlet and let us know who your question is directed to. All right, let's see. I see Laura Leslie with her hand. Laura, I'll ask you to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Brittany. This is Laura Leslie with WRAL News in Raleigh. I'm wondering a couple questions. Number one, what's the average amount of time that people spend on probation or post-release supervision in North Carolina?
I'll take a stab at that one, Laura. You know, our expert witness, Dr. Frank Baumgartner, found that the average period for a probationer is about 30 months. Post-release supervision is a little bit different because those are statutorily defined, and that time period on supervision can range anywhere from 9 to 12 months.
Okay. And one other question. I mean, obviously, there are going to be people who hear the story who say, well, when you committed a felony, you gave up your right to vote until the time that you're done serving your sentence for your felony. What do you say to those people?
I'll take a stab at that. Laura, this is Dennis. How you doing? There's a lot more to it than just the felony disenfranchisement. Historically, a person was denied the right to vote, not only because if he was a felon, it was because he was African American. So this is a disproportionately African American issue of race. It has nothing to do, has nothing just to do with having a felony. And once that process began, what became a felony became very trivialized. And so then people who were arrested were people of African American descent. So this piece of just creating a felony and losing the right to vote is not just what it looks like on its face. It's a historical problem of racism. I'll
add to that. Thank you, Dennis. North Carolina's policy of using criminal convictions to deny voting rights to people living in the community began in the 1860s, just after the Civil War, when white former Confederates engaged in a widespread campaign across the state of North Carolina of convicting and whipping Black people to preemptively block them from voting under North Carolina law in anticipation of the 15th Amendment passing. The policy that was eliminated by the court's ruling today it's the policy that began in the 1860s. So to a person who would say, well, you did a crime, you lose your rights, I think it's misinformed. You have to look at where this policy came from. What was it designed to do, and what does it do today? It overwhelmingly disproportionately disenfranchises Black people because that's what it was designed to do.
I would like to add to that. This is Diana. When a person has paid their debt to society inside of a facility and they re-enter back to become that productive citizen, they're paying taxes. They have to get jobs. They have to take care of family. They're going to the grocery store. They're paying bills. They're paying taxes. And a person that has to pay taxes should have a voice in that society, in that community that he live, work, and play in every day. So if you're paying taxes, then you should have a right to vote.
Thank you, Diana. I see next we have Gary Robertson. Gary, would you unmute and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. This is probably for Stanton, but if there's another lawyer, could you just kind of go through the potential appeals process here? And I know that there'll be a final ruling based on the trial evidence and the arguments made there, but there's still plenty. Could you just kind of describe, I assume that if the defendants want to, they can make this still a longer process through the appeals.
Sure, I'm happy to take a stab at it. You're right. There are opportunities for litigants who lose cases to appeal. We don't have the final ruling from the court on the merits of all of our claims that were the subject of the trial last week. Today's ruling affords full relief, but we'll file post-trial briefs on September 10th, and at some point the court will issue a final decision on the claims, and then it's possible there could be an appeal. I hope there won't, because I just can't imagine anyone sitting through the trial that we all conducted last week and hearing about this law and its racist history and its racist effect today, and the total inability of any person to offer any good reason for doing this other than white supremacy. I can't imagine a person sitting through all of that for a week and then being told by the court agrees with all of that, and then continuing to fight for this law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stanton. We see Will Doran. Will, would you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thanks, Brittany. Yes, this is Will Doran from the Raleigh News and Observer. I know obviously this ruling today is kind of the continuation of the ruling before the 2020 elections that applied to a smaller group of people. And I was wondering if any of y'all now who kind of, deal with this issue on the ground know with the people who did win back the right to vote for the 2020 elections, how many did actually get out and, register to vote or actually cast a ballot. I don't know if you have, numbers or percentages on that. But if you do, I would love to hear that. And then also, going forward with this ruling now, kind of what is the plan to, actually put it in place and, educate people about it.
Will, this is Attorney Daryl Atkinson with Forward Justice. The hard data from the 2020 election, we have not quantified. But our expert witness, Dr. Tracy Birch, found that under the supervised population at the time that she studied the voting behavior of this particular population, 20% of those folks voted in the 2016 election. She went back and looked at past elections. She went back and looked at the 2012 election. And that 20% number was durable over multiple presidential cycles, right? So just taking the statistical data that we put into evidence during the trial and apply that to this 56,000 who now their voting rights are unlocked, it would be completely reasonable to believe that 20% of those folks would vote as well, if not more, particularly in important subgroups. So, I mean, until the dust settles and all of that 2020 electoral data is quantified, I think those are some of the best data estimates that we have and that we put into evidence for the 3-judge panel.
And Will, part two of your question with regard to what kind of plans of organizing do we have excuse me, that we have in mind? And I can say that for sure, as a member of the North Carolina Second Chance Alliance and also the Executive Director of Community Success Initiative, starting tomorrow, that we plan to start a voter registration drive across the state.
Thank you, Dennis. We will do one more call for questions. If there's anyone who has questions, please raise your hand and we will ask you to unmute and ask your question in the order that we see them. In the meantime, I'm going to drop a few resources in our chat box. One is we put together an interactive timeline that shows the history of felony disenfranchisement in the state of North Carolina. So we'll drop that in for folks who want to take a look at that. The second link I'm dropping in the chat is a link to an explainer video that we've put together that gives a brief history of felony disenfranchisement in North Carolina. And the last link I will put in the chat is for folks who want to go back and watch the live stream of the trial where our attorneys argued so brilliantly and put forth amazing evidence to show. And that's why we're sitting here today, victorious on this historic day where we've been successful in unlocking the votes for thousands of our community members. So the last link is the link if you all would like to view the live stream of that trial. I see we have a question from Laura. Laura, if you would please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure, thank you very much. I wondered whether today's ruling, whether there's video of today's ruling from the bench, or whether we could get that to use in our stories for tonight.
Unfortunately, no. I'll let one of the lawyers give you a more appropriate answer, but no, the short answer is no video.
That's also the long answer. It's just there was no video. There was no court reporter. There's no transcript. The court said that its written order on today's ruling would be out, I believe, later this week.
Thank you, Stanton. I'll also drop my email address in the chat if there may be follow-up questions or if folks would like to arrange interviews with any of our attorneys, individual plaintiffs, organizational plaintiffs on the case. I'll drop that information in the chat now. We'll do one last call for questions, and if there are none, we will close out. And thank you all for joining us.
Let me just say that the North Carolina NAACP is joining with the North Carolina Second Chance Alliance in doing this massive, massive voter registration drive. Unlock the vote.
Thank you, Reverend Spearman. All right, seeing no further questions, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our press conference, and everyone have an amazing, amazing day.
Thank you.